This week, ADN TV has been learning more about the proposed changes to Somalia's electoral system through the wisdom and insights of Mohamed Abdirizak, former Somali foreign minister and candidate for president in the last election. Today, we look at the potential development of political parties through the new electoral reforms. Mohamed, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Explain for us the proportional representation system and why the development of political parties is important for Somalia's democratic future.
A proportional representation model is a model that is increasingly countries are using it. It is really easier to use than a system as to what we would use in the US or in the UK or advanced democracies. And all the requirements that are needed for example, first past the post are not possible in Somalia. Therefore, proportional representation is much easier, where a number of political parties will compete and they will share the percentage that they got in that election in the parliament. So it will be proportional to the seats that they won throughout the country. There's also something that has to go along with in this case, which is the idea of having single constituency. Single constituency, the whole country as a single constituency, just like they have even in some developed countries, like the Netherlands has a single constituency. But for Somalia, the reason why we would want to have a single constituency is that we do not know which district has more people and which district that does not. And since all of this will touch on clan politics and all of these things, you do not want to get into that. So the parties would just have to go to wherever they can, to all the major cities, and have people line up and elect the political party. That way, it is much easier. Maybe in subsequent years, maybe in subsequent elections, we can move to a more, I'm not saying that proportional representation, single constituency is perfect, but it's a lot better and it works, it's practical, it's doable, and it will allow every Somali to vote.
Does this eliminate the criticism that some clans have all the power?
To some extent, but not really, because even if you want to bring that, it should not be done, it cannot be done in one go, in one stage. So initial elections, we will focus on having Somali people elect their members of parliament, for example. And that will allow everybody who is eligible, willing, who wants to vote, to come and vote.
Talk to us about how political parties can develop ideologies and why that's good for Somalia's democratic future.
Somalis are very creative. We are known for creativity in business and competition and all of that. And in this case, they would have to come up with. Our country has a number of challenges, from social issues to education to main issues such as security or unemployment. And political parties would have to actually develop a political platform that is different from their competitors, and to say, this is what we stand for. This is our regional policy. This is our international policy. This is our social policy. These are our economic policies. And this is how we are going to manage. And so once you have that type of competition to start, then you will see people really outperforming each other and so forth, and political parties will develop.
In this new proposal, it is suggested that the country limit the number of political parties to 2 This may seem to many to be an emulation of the American system, but of course, the American system has two dominant political parties because of funding and other reasons, but other political parties can compete. Is this good for Somalia, limiting it to two parties?
It is not really the best democratic practices to limit by law or by constitution. But there is a reason behind it, in that, for example, in 1968 there were close to 100 political parties, and each one was a clan, and so some political leaders are thinking about the need to have people to come together rather than to be divided along the clans. However, it is really not the best practices. These political parties will come and go, and the real ones will stay. The real ones are the ones that will have multi-clans. Their identity will be about their political objectives and so forth. Also, as you mentioned, in the United States, there's no law prohibiting from political parties to be formed or to compete. And I do remember 30 years ago, Mr. Ross Perot was a real, has put together a formidable political party. Of course, it's always dominated by the two main parties. They get all the funding. People identify with these political parties. It is not easy to really know about these other smaller parties that are forming. But the point is, the law does not prohibit. The competition is open. Second, by definition, proportional representation encourages more parties, not two. Whereas the system in the US, first past the post, encourages two parties.
Thank you very much, Mohammed, for sharing your wisdom on how Somalia is going to move democracy forward. ADN TV will continue our conversation with Mohammed Abdirizak when we discuss whether Somalia is ready to stage universal suffrage elections in Part 4 of our series. This is Africa Digital News Television, ADN TV. Thank you for joining us.